Some call it futuristic, others enigmatic, and many see it as timeless as well. Just some of the words used to describe Japan and a few of the many reasons people keep flocking to the country. Its inbound tourism numbers remain strong. The Japan National Tourism Organization says there were 10 million visitors from January to March this year. But the numbers also show an interesting trend. Arrivals from China are down, while other markets are hitting record highs. So what do we make of this data? Are we witnessing a resilient recovery or a shift with consequences for Japan's tourism industry? I'm Arnold Gay, and helping me find answers in this episode of the CNA Correspondent podcast is Michiyo Ishida, Senior Correspondent in Japan for us. Michiyo, good to see you again.
Okay, good to see you.
I want you to help me make sense of this. We know that, the inbound numbers for Japan are back to pre-pandemic levels. So for most people, this is like, job done, let's go home. But in Japan, apparently it's not. How come?
Okay, well, let me give you some figures. Yes, as you mentioned, it's much stronger than pre-pandemic levels. In 2019, Japan recorded 31.88 million inbound tourists. That number slumped due to the pandemic, as in anywhere in the world. Japan slowly started to open its doors to tourists from June 2022, given they were guided tours with daily arrival cap and with visa requirement. Now, in 2023, foreign nationalities Japan entry was normalized. And in 2024 already, numbers have exceeded pre-pandemic levels at 36.87 million. And in 2025, it's 42.68 million. Now, Japan is targeting 60 million in 2030, and consumption from tourism, 15 trillion yen, which is about 94 billion US dollars. Now, in the past, inbound tourism did not contribute to Japan's economy. In 2019, it accounted for just 2% of Japan's GDP. It's half of an average country, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council. But it's grown quickly post-pandemic, and in 2025, Japan's GDP, which was around 590 trillion yen, consumption by visitors marked 9.46 trillion yen, adding to that domestic travelers spending about 26.77 trillion. And it reached 6% of Japan's GDP, so it's tripled since 2019. Now, in March, the Japanese government introduced its basic plan for the promotion of a tourism-oriented nation, starting from April 2026, ending March 2030. And it aims for a sustainable advancement, expansion of consumption, promotion to the countryside, link tourism with local development, and promote the use of new technology.
Okay, Michiyo, I want you to help us. I mean, those are ambitious targets, and apparently Japan is on course, to achieving some of those targets. But I want to ask you about the data, the visitors from China in particular. How far below are they, from pre-pandemic levels? And I'm trying to understand. Obviously, COVID-19 is a major reason, for this drop. But I also want to understand, what more recent events between Tokyo and Beijing, and perhaps the new prime minister as well, may have been a factor?
Yeah. Well, looking at data from the tourism agency, Chinese visitors grew steadily from 2013 after territorial spat became quiet, and with 9.59 million in 2019. And after the pandemic in 2023 April, Japan opened its doors to Chinese tourists. In 2024, Chinese mainlanders became the biggest spenders in Japan. And in January to September 2025, their numbers exceeded the 2019 annual figure. But in December, arrival plunged by 45.3% from a year ago. And the numbers continued to fall. In March 2026, visitors from mainland China dropped by 55.9% compared to a year ago to 291,600. Japan National Tourism Organization explained that Chinese were affected by the Chinese government's warning that Japan was dangerous to travel to. Along with that, the reduction of flights, which started in November. But we reporters are aware it's since Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's comment on Taiwan, referring to Taiwan contingency as a possible threat to Japan's security, which did not sit well with Chinese authorities, that the fall started. In fact, after that, Beijing discouraged its people from traveling to Japan, and with less demands, Chinese airlines started to pull out of Japan. Now, the Koreans are the biggest travelers to Japan, followed by those from Taiwan. Overtaking the Chinese mainlanders even are the Americans. And there's also a huge increase from Southeast Asian countries.
Is this a permanent shift? And is Japan worried about this, new mix that you were just talking about?
Well, if political tensions between Tokyo and Beijing are mended, then Chinese visitors could go up again, and demand could lead to Chinese airlines returning to Japanese cities. But for now, there are no such signs. And in any case, the Japanese government is talking about diversifying nationalities, inbound visitors. And businesses that relied on the visitors from China are starting to shift their target, especially to the Koreans and the Americans. Here's what Mr. Yasuhisa Shimizu, Managing Director of the Japan Tourism Research Consultancy, told me.
While global tensions are rising, Japan is being recognized for its safe and secure environment and high standards of service. And the depreciation of yen is very much positive impact.
So, Michiyo, let's talk about the yen. I mean, it comes up very often, from us here in Singapore, elsewhere in this region as well. Value for money, your dollar can be stretched further. But I have to say that Japan isn't the only one. You have the same sort of situation in countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, even South Korea that you mentioned. So it must go beyond the yen. What's Japan doing, beyond the currency difference that keeps attracting people, to the country?
Well, of course, the strong currency, in other countries is very attractive, and they can come and savor, Japanese delicacies such as sushi, tempura, sukiyaki, which for the Japanese could be quite pricey. And for international travelers, reasonable or even cheaper than what they can consume in their own countries. As to promotions, the Japanese government and prefectures hold campaigns all around the world. They particularly designate specific countries to push with promotion for a specified period. Let me give you an example of Mie Prefecture in Japan, which is one of the least visited areas by foreign tourists. They recently decided to target repeat travelers from Taiwan, Thailand, Singapore, France, Germany, and the US. And they decided not to target China and Korea. And the reason they give is due to bilateral historic risks.
So I want to ask you a bit more about this diversification. I mean, I imagine it must come with some trade-offs because Chinese tour groups, when they were going to Japan, we know they were usually very big because many Chinese had saved up for it. They were also spending a lot more than perhaps independent travelers, which I understand, Japan is seeing a lot more of. So, is Japan's tourism industry ready for that? I'm wondering in particular about, I guess, sections within the tourism industry which were very dependent on these large tour groups from mainland China.
Well, actually, I've been speaking to a department store in Ginza, and the press officer there told me that in 2019, 70 to 90% of foreign shoppers were Chinese, based on those who sought sales tax exemption. And, they bought luxury goods and department stores because that's what they're known for. In 2023, ratio of Chinese shoppers fell to 50%. And those from Taiwan, the US, are today some of the biggest and major spenders. So the diversification is already happening. And Chinese tourists actually in the past didn't necessarily bring benefits to Japan's economy as a whole. Yes, they were big shoppers, but basically analysts here say they flew on Chinese airlines, booked Chinese-owned buses, hotels, and dined at Chinese-owned restaurants.
So, Michiyo, we know that, the cities of Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto are very, very popular, perhaps too crowded in terms of the number of visitors. So I'm wondering, what's the situation like in the rest of Japan? And also because the yen is weak, are Japanese traveling, within the country, going to other places to see the rest of the country also?
Okay, regarding this so-called golden route, Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto, yes, they remain to be popular, but I've been hearing that Osaka used to be very popular among the Chinese, and they're seeing less Chinese now, so they are especially strongly diverting to other nationalities or other tourists. Now, let me give you an example of a World Heritage site such as Himeji Castle in Hyogo Prefecture. It has from March this year introduced two different entrance fees, one for local residents or 1,000 yen, another for non-local residents, which includes Japanese travelers from outside Hyogo Prefecture, and it's more than double or 2,500 yen. As a result, number of visitors fell 17.2%, but income doubled. Now, in March, the Japanese government introduced its basic plan for promotion of tourism. And for domestic travelers, they contribute to the economy much more than the inbound tourists. They spend 3 times more. And one reason why they are, the Japanese tourists are so important these days is that not many hold passports. The latest is 18% of the population. Now, some reasons given are they did not renew their passports after the travel restriction was lifted due to the pandemic. The depreciation of the yen making traveling overseas unattractive. And they realized that Japan does offer a lot to the Japanese and with many attractive sites all over Japan.
Michiyo, of course, we're all dealing, with the situation in the Middle East right now. I'm wondering if these external events, with the war in Iran, on Iran in particular, is that affecting inbound, tourists going into Japan?
Well, yes, including the Middle East crisis, it is impacting Japan to some degree. Let's hear again from Mr. Yasuhisa Shimizu, Managing Director for Japan Tourism Research Consultancy.
The only region to see a decline, apart from China, was the Middle East, with visitor number falling by 30%. From April onwards, this is likely to affect visitors from Europe. There may be a positive impact on visitors from Asia and Oceania, as limited access to Europe may lead them to choose Japan as their destination instead.
But, there are those who do not hold an optimistic outlook depending on how long the Middle East crisis will continue, how seriously the oil prices might impact daily lives and general commodity prices. But regardless of external events, Japan is still considered safe and clean, offers enjoyment during the 4 different seasons. Different parts of Japan offers its signature ingredients and cuisine. And it's really easy to go around Japan with a vast network of public transportation and known to be punctual too.
That's all true. Michiyo, I do want to ask you about, the energy crisis as well. We know that Japan is a big importer, relies heavily on imported oil. Is this something that might affect the tourism industry? I mean, obviously you have buses, you have rail networks, you have internal travel, all of which are going to need fuel and, fuel-related resources. Is the industry preparing for this, ready for this?
Before this Middle East crisis had around 250 days worth of oil, stockpile. So the Japanese government has been saying that Japan will be okay for a while. The government has not set any sort of restrictions on the usage of vehicles or the use of oil. So far, life is continuing in Japan as usual. But, depending on what happens, we have to wait and see. And we know that Prime Minister Takaichi is trying to diversify procurement of energy sources, fuels. She will be traveling to different parts of the world. She is also welcoming leaders from different parts of the countries to discuss with them, on the possibility of diversifying procurement.
And finally, there's this question. I came across this phrase recently, tourism pollution. So I want to ask you what the national mood is like in Japan, because some residents anyway, in some places complain about overcrowding, badly behaved, visitors and so forth. Is this a mood that's prevalent, or is it different from place to place?
It does differ from place to place and depending on who you're talking to. Let me give you an interesting example. I wanted to film at this World Heritage Site, but then I was turned down the request. And the reason given was they were afraid that if CNA were to cover their site, they would attract too many tourists and they would suffer from over-tourism. So
I've never heard of that before.
There's that sentiment, right. Yes. So I was directly affected by this. But anyway, that's just one example. But, for the regular citizen, let's say, we've been hearing complaints of foreign tourists, not separating trash, for example. And the Japanese are very stringent about how waste is handled. So that's been causing friction in neighborhoods where people are running Airbnb, for example. And increase of foreign visitors in particular places are leading to the hike of prices at restaurants and hotels. And, that's obviously negative for residents and also for Japanese business travelers who need to stay in those hotels. So it is a mixed situation here in Japan.
And officials are aware of it and trying to find the right balance?
Well, they should be aware. They should know what the public is, saying and how they're feeling. So they should deal with the situation, yes.
Okay, Michiyo, see you in Japan soon.
Okay, see you soon.
And thank you for watching and listening as well. I'm Arnold Gay, and this CNA Correspondent podcast was brought to you by Tiffany Ang, Annette Vettel-Vero, and Craig Davis.